The reason that I wanted to do this, pretty simple.
Yep.
If you live in the district, you got this letter.
Correct.
And it's about pretty much funding Pioneer's portion of the Shelton High School remodel, correct?
That is correct.
So tell me, why does Pioneer have to pay?
The current RCWs require non-high school districts to pay in two forms. First, non-high fees, which apply each year annually, and we pay, give or take, about $700,000 a year to two districts because we're a non-high district out of our levy funds. Most of it goes to Shelton, a small portion of it goes to North Mason based on the number of students that attend. So that comes off of Shelton's levy rate. So Shelton passes a levy tax, we pay a portion of that levy tax on behalf of our kiddos, and we collect that from our taxpayers and pay that on your behalf. When a non-high district feeding into a high school district and that high school district goes for a capital projects bond, the same rule applies. So the general rule of thumb is anytime a high school district, in this case for Pioneer, passes a tax, we are required to pay a portion of that tax to pay for our students to attend services within that high school district.
I have three options. Pay out of the, you need another bond to pay for it all, because it's $4.5 million.
Yeah, we're really at a crossroads here, I think, and so our purpose of the letter, and we're following it up this week with another a little more detailed letter with regards to rates that should hit mailboxes tomorrow, and I'll give you a copy today. But we're really at a crossroads here. We see, several Shelton improvements to their high school over the course of the next probably 20 to 30 years.
Okay.
And so, at very least, we want to make sure that we help our taxpayers understand the complexity of this issue. If we keep doing what we're doing, there are pros and cons. If we do nothing, there's a con. And if we build our own high school, there's pros and cons. But we really have to come together as a community, and what my board really wants us to do is ask the authentic question, give us feedback to share what are your thoughts, on the direction we should head. Option one in the information that will be mailed out to our community is really keep doing what we're doing.
Okay.
We pay our non-high fees, those apply each year. So we collect taxes, your local levy funds, we collect those and send those through to town, and that pays for our students to attend Shelton High School. On top of that, when they pass this capital projects, then there's a formula that the state will use to determine between assessed valuation and number of students that attend the high school on a fee that we would have to pay beyond our annual local levy fee, okay, to pay for the capital improvements at the high school. Shelton's initial position is they believe we owe them approximately $4.5 million. Okay, there are some ways that we can go about that. If the community speaks up and that's the direction we want to go, we have choices there. We could do a capital projects levy, which the advantage to that is, it's not a bond. We don't have to pay interest rates. We collect the fee from our local taxpayers and we pay it to Shelton on our taxpayers' behalf. You can run a bond for $4.5 million, but then you get into paying interest rates, and so it ends up being more than $4.5 million. There's also something out there that is called non-voted debt, and our district has the ability to go to a bank and take a loan on behalf of our taxpayers and pay for that debt. So we do have some choices there, but give or take, it works out to be approximately, if we do the capital projects levy, to pay this $4.5 million, it ends up being about 72 cents per thousand for 6 years.
Okay.
Is what we've kind of settled on. If we do a 20-year bond, can I grab a piece of paper real quick? So if our choice is to bond that $4.5 million and pay interest on that, we think that for a 20-year bond we could settle for about 28 cents per thousand, and for a 10-year bond it would be approximately 45 cents per thousand. So there are some options there. Option number two, really has significant cons, which is annex into the Shelton School District, which means Pioneer School District no longer exists. That's difficult on our tax base. It's actually the most expensive choice, because our assessed valuation is considered property rich and Shelton's assessed valuation is considered property poor. And so, you can see how the numbers work out there. And also Shelton School District has a philosophy that their board voters support, which created a scenario where they're willing to max out their bonding capacity. That's what they did through their most recent bond approval. And we don't have that philosophy here. We have about $24 million in outstanding bonds, and we have approximately $40 million of bonding capacity left on top of that. So philosophically, it's hard to match up with, keeping up with Shelton around what their philosophy is on bonding and what Pioneer School District's philosophy is on bonding. And then option three, we feel like this has to, all three options have to be put on the table. Option three would give us a potentially a long-term solution in controlling our debt. It is more upfront. It's not 72 cents for 6 years, but it would potentially be about $1 per thousand for 25 years to borrow some money to build a high school that would be jointly with another school district. And our thoughts are, there are 3 school districts that are in this same scenario as Pioneer School District. Hood Canal is a non-high school that feeds into Shelton, and so is Southside. Our board has had very preliminary meetings with Hood Canal School District to determine, do you have any interest in coming together to build a joint high school? They've shown some interest. Our board's shown some interest. But before we get the cart out ahead of the horse here, we wanted to make sure that our community has an opportunity to speak up to say, is that even an option for us? But between the 2 districts, we felt like because we share a border, they're in the same position we are. Their tax base is very similar to ours. They owe Shelton approximately $4.2 million. So you start putting money together in a pot. It doesn't take too long to come up with numbers that might build your own high school and then relieve you from that tax burden from the Shelton School District.
Now, if memory serves, and I think this happened before I came into the area, is that they went to the voters and asked for a high school, and I don't have a clue what the numbers were, but I know it failed, obviously. Mm-hmm. Is that still a feeling around, or do you have any idea?
Dick Parrott's an old board member, a very well-known, respected member of our community. He campaigned many, or at least one that I'm aware, measures to try to pass a bond to build a high school. And Dick tells the story of, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but the district failed that bond effort by about 6 votes. So, I can't speak to the feeling then around the high school. It seemed like it was pretty close and there might have been some momentum towards it. This letter that we sent out a couple weeks ago and conversations that I've started to, have out in the community, the feedback is first, shock, oh my gosh. How did this come to be? And I get that. It's an uncomfortable situation. I mean, anytime you're taxed without having full representation on that tax, it's tough to swallow. I'm a taxpayer myself. So, but once folks get over the shock, then the questions start to roll out, and there's lots of legitimate questions around. Okay, so what do each of these mean to me, and what can and what's potential, what's the possibilities? And so initial feedback has been leaning towards building a high school. Very initial feedback. We have approximately 65 responses online and about another 30 in-person responses. and approximately 77% of those are billed to high school, about 20% pay the fee, and I had 1 vote for annex. So the high school appears to be at least right out of the gates, and we have a long ways to go. We want to spend the next couple of months just collecting feedback, around what do you really want us to do. And that's the one thing I really want to stress here is our board is committed to representing our community. We do not have an agenda through this process at all. We just want to make an educated decision for our future, because again, getting back to the crossroads, we're making a decision here that will impact us for the next 50 or 60 years. And if option 1 is okay to our community, we want to be educated to know that there's more costs that could potentially come. And that's an important piece. We know that, the Shelton High School is in step 1 of a renovation project. And so how much will step 2 and step 3 be? I don't know. I just know that it's coming. Is it 5, 10, 15 years down the road? I can't answer that today. I'm not even sure Shelton can answer that. They don't have their long-range capital plan built just yet. But it's coming, and if we stick with option 1, I want to do my due diligence to make sure our community doesn't get surprised, down that road. So.
What, as you mentioned, the shock is the building new high school or building a high school. Can it be done? I mean, you're saying if you look at the non-high fees and the portion, and you're talking 4.5, 4.25. That's what, $9 million thereabouts.
Yeah.
I heard that that's not possible to build a
No.
high school for $9 million.
No, it's not. No, it's my best estimate. Now we're just talking estimates at this point in time, but one factor to consider is we know North Mason built their new high school for about $30 million.
Right.
Okay, but they hit just before the bubble hit around construction, or the inflation of construction cost. So if we're talking building a high school a couple of years out, we're probably looking for a school of 500 students between $40 and $50 million. Okay, and so that's where the dollar figure comes up around. If we were to tax our base around a high school at approximately $1 per thousand, we could raise locally anywhere from $20 to $25 million. If Hood Canal did the same, and this is all hypothetical, but if Hood Canal did the same and brought another $20 to $25 million to the table, taxing their constituents for $1, and then we get a state match on top of that, estimated to be about $5 billion. Now we're talking. So most certainly the cheapest option today is to pay the fee, but the unknowns have to weigh into that decision. I mean, who knows what the next bond will be with the Shelton School District. It's there are, best I can account, they're adding 41,000 square feet, and that fixes or brings up to standard about 25% of their facility. So the other 75%, what happens with that? So is that related to direct costs? I don't know. But it's just something to consider. I mean, it's not going to take too many, $5 million clips to get to an initial $20 million investment to build your own high school.
Okay. I really want to ask you about where would it be located and all that. We're talking really thoroughly, really. Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't get that you've been talking to I didn't quite put that together.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming together with a different district. Southside doesn't sound to me like it would be realistic for them to join in.
Yeah.
Just because of their location.
Yeah, we started this initial conversation a few months back because we shared that border, and not a lot of folks know that we have a shared border, north of Lake Limerick.
Right.
And so, if we're going to do something together, we have to be geographically located close so that, kids aren't on buses for an extraordinary amount of time. And so, that just kind of naturally brought us together to say, what if? So Southside is in a little different scenario. I mean, they're all the way across town, around the bay, and it's, the transportation could be significant there. But there's a chance, if we headed down the path of a high school where we could pick some land that would be closer for our students to attend a high school than Shelton High School, and the same would apply for Hood Canal.
Thinking in my head. Central Mason High School sounds very interesting, but
Yeah.
So the purpose now is just gather information,
Correct.
find out what the people want. And
Correct.
To your knowledge, is Hood Canal doing the same thing?
They're doing exactly the same thing. In fact, their publications look very similar to ours. And because the scenario that we're faced is almost identical. They have to pay a fee of $4.2 million. We have to pay a fee of $4.5 million. So yeah, we're in the same boat, so to speak.
So what is the reaction that you've gotten from Shelton officials? Or have you?
Shelton, we've had a few conversations around this matter. I've met with Dr. Alex Apostle on a couple of occasions specifically, and he has provided his support for our community to go through the necessary steps to determine our future. So he's been very supportive with that. And, this whole thing is a mess. It really is. And it's not Shelton's mess, it's not Pioneer's mess, it's really a mess within the law. Or the RCWs. But so I want to make it very clear, this is not Pioneer versus Shelton at all. It's just we feel as district officials we need to do our due diligence to get out into our community and make sure that we make the best choice for our community. It appears messy, it appears that the two districts are contentious, and that's absolutely not the case. He's been supportive of our work, and we are very supportive of his work. We're glad that Shelton has passed their bond and, can renovate some of their schools. We're unhappy that, our people don't get a voice in that.
Right. That's another thing that was brought up at a different meeting somewhere along the line. That there was some legislation to change that.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I have spoke to our representatives, specifically Drew McEwen, about this very piece. And when we had our original conversation, it kind of shocked him because he was not necessarily aware of you can't be aware of every law in the books. But he was very supportive in trying to, in the future, come up with creative solutions around fixing that. This session was pretty busy, and so there probably wasn't a whole lot of time to accomplish that. But it's something that our lawmakers need to weigh in on in the very near future, because in our opinion, as Pioneer taxpayers, the system is broken. There's very few situations in life where you're taxed without representation, and this is one.
Okay.
The advantage that we have here is both. From what I understand, Drew McEwen and Tim Sheldon are both residents of the Hood Canal School District, so they'll deal with the complications around this very law, and so our hopes are that that will help us come up with creative solutions for maybe not this bond, but for the future, for not maybe our area, but for districts across the state.
So with I can't say really difficulty, but of getting the bond passed for this current school you're building, could that play a role in which choice would, let's say we the community says let's go with option one, just pay our bill and see what happens a few years down the road.
Correct.
But then the voters say, no, I don't think so. You just came out and said, you just taxed us for school. Why do we want more? You feel that could be a difficult step?
It could be, but the complication with that is the default choice. If our district does nothing and chooses not to pay the capital fee due to the Shelton School District and choose not to build our own high school, the default choice is annexation, and that's the most expensive choice of the three. It's very clear in the law that if we fail 2 elections, whatever those elections may be, bonds, levies, whatever it might be, the Shelton School District can go through a process to annex our district, which dissolves our district and makes, Shelton School District one big district. And again, that's the worst scenario for our taxpayers because our rates would go, well above any of these other options. So it's a tough choice. We get it. I feel somewhat uncomfortable because I'm not, when I was out campaigning for our new schools for the Pioneer School District, that's ours.
Right.
And we own that. And we own the decision and we own the choices and we own the position to put the resolution on the ballot. This is not necessarily ours, so I feel like I'm doing work, and it's okay, I'm paid to do this type of work, but I feel like I'm doing work on another district's behalf to pay our fees, so it feels messy that way. But once again, doesn't mean that we're dissatisfied with the Shelton School District, because this is well above, their decision-making authority as well.
Have you, and I know this, I don't know how you could do this, but have you considered doing what has been done in other places as an advisory ballot? Put something out there that says, here's your choices, what do you think? And go from there. Has that been considered, or we're early in the process.
Kind of like a survey?
A survey,
Yeah.
but more of an official, although advisory ballots don't mean anything.
Yeah.
It's just a thought that if it came down to that there isn't a clear choice after you go through your position, would you go that far, or just throw something out there?
Yeah, I'd have to learn more about that.
Okay.
We're hoping that through our number of events that we have scheduled, number of mailers, and also our online survey, we'll be able to make a pretty, quick decision on this, relatively speaking. We'd like to be able to have all of our community feedback to us by the end of June so that the board can set a direction, because we really owe it to the Shelton School District to be prompt with our decisions. They are making decisions that impact their future as well. They need to know, are we in or are we out? And so our boards really put me at task to get out into the communities, be relatively aggressive with that schedule so that I can collect as much feedback as possible. May 16th is a critical day. It's a community forum that we have scheduled right here at Pioneer Middle School to be in the gymnasium at 5:30. Again, that's May 16th. We want the community to come out to be able to just engage in a community forum where there can be questions, answers, comments, opinions shared directly with our board. And so my hope would be to get, a great representation of our community out on that evening so that, individuals feel comfortable speaking directly to our board. And then there's also, in the flyer this week, there's also some other dates scheduled in community halls where I will also be speaking about this very piece. So we're hoping to give folks the opportunity to hear more information if they're interested, or we provide enough information by way of our mailers to help folks make an educated decision for themselves in a rather prompt manner.
If you're going to vote on whichever one that the community wants you to do, how quickly would that appear? Would it be next February? Would it be the coming general election in November? Or is that another thing that needs to be decided?
That would still need to be decided. But again, we want to be as prompt as we can to be respectful of the Shelton School District, because they're, I wouldn't say they're, waiting for us to make a decision. They're moving forward, but they also need to be given time to respond to, changes that we might be making as a community. And if not, they need to know that so that they can build the appropriate facility to meet the needs of all our kids. So our board is really very committed to getting through this process as quickly as possible. Now, if we went option 1, just pay the fee, that would be a relatively quick turnaround. We could probably put a resolution on the ballot for November. That would in theory, begin to pay that bill. If it's designing a high school, I mean, we're going to be talking into next calendar year before we would be ready to put anything on the ballot. So it kind of depends on the direction we go.
And it has a lot to do with what the Canal
Yes.
School District folks
Yes.
decide as well. 'Cause
Fascinating enough, their initial feedback almost mirrors our initial feedback, which is
I would think
fascinating.
So. Yeah, well, I would think so. I mean,
well, it's shocking to me, down to the details. So yeah, they're right in the same range we are. But again, that's very initial feedback.
Right.
And there's many other opportunities for the community to speak up. And again, I can't say it enough. Our board has not made a decision and will not make a decision on the direction of our community until, all of these opportunities have been exhausted.
okay. That's all that I had, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting seeing this letter.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
It's the timing could not be more off for us. At some point in time, we needed to have this conversation in our community because, paying fees to other districts, as long as folks want to continue to do that, we'll support that. But it's down to as simple as anytime Shelton passes a tax, we have to tax. That's the one thing that folks can walk away from is they tax, we have to. Because we don't have the fees, and I've taken, some heat initially around, well, how come we're not budgeting for this? Well, we don't have revenue sources that allow us to build buildings. We have revenue sources to allow us to teach, students and teaching and learning side, but we don't have reserve accounts that would have enough to build buildings. And so the rule of Washington State is, or the law of Washington State is, you to build buildings, you pass bonds, and that's how you build a building, with the exception of a portable. I mean, districts can afford to buy a portable and place a portable because, that's going to be a, few $100,000. But beyond that, we just don't have revenue sources that allow us to build buildings. And so our district is very fiscally sound. In fact, we have the highest financial rating that districts can have. And so it's not about not having reserve dollars. We have reserve dollars, but all those funds to us come in categories, and they're restricted on how they can be spent. And so we can have, we collect $2.3 million in levy dollars from our taxpayers to pay for the McCleary decision, the underfunding of education. But you can't use levy dollars to build buildings. That's so every dollar, and you go down to title funds and special education funds and LAP funds, they all come in and they cannot be used to build capital. And so, we get, kind of pushed into a corner around, we couldn't have $4.5 million of capital funds sitting on the shelf thinking that we're ready to support a Shelton bond. It's just not possible in the current tax structure and the current revenue structure. It's not possible. So, but as it relates to our fiscal management, our district scores at the highest rating about fiscally managing our resources. We do a phenomenal job of that, and our audits have been clean for 8 years. So it's not about mismanagement of funds. It's just there's no revenue source to build buildings, and the philosophy of the state is you pass a bond to do that, just as Shelton did. Now we have to respond to that.